For those of you that are standing, there are some chairs in the front if you so desire. Good morning, everyone. Today is a really special day. Today is a day that we reflect, that we allow God to do some special things in our own soul as it relates to something very, very different. In order for us to really appreciate the resurrection, we have to go back a couple of days. The sky goes black. The earth shakes. The Messiah is dead. His body was wrapped in linen cloths, sealed inside of a tomb, and hope was sealed along with it. The disciples, they went into hiding. The women, they headed over to the tomb to finish the embalming of a corpse. And they never expected, in their wildest imagination, to see Jesus alive again. The whole movement looked like a failed cult. What do you do when the one thing that you've pinned all your hope on dies? Because here's the reality that most of us don't want to face. If Jesus is truly alive, not symbolically, not metaphorically, not spiritually, but if he is still alive, then life as we know it cannot be found in anything that dies. Sarah was 34 when the doctor sat her down and said words that no parent or spouse ever wants to hear. It's stage 4. We can try treatments, but I'm so sorry. The odds are not good. In the weeks that followed, she watched her entire world collapse in slow motion. The promotion that she's worked so hard for 10 years, gone. The wedding date that she and Mike had finally set, postponed indefinitely. One Saturday night, after another brutal round of treatment, Sarah lay in the dark hospital room staring at the ceiling as the monitors beep like a countdown. She whispered into the empty air, "God, if you're real, where are you? I believe, I pray, I trusted you with my future, and now everything I love is slipping through my fingers, and it feels like you just don't care." Tears slid down her face. She had pinned every hope on a long life with a man that she loved, on watching her kids grow up, on plans she'd carefully built, but now all dead. Sarah didn't suddenly get all the answers that night. The diagnosis didn't disappear, but something shifted inside of her. You see, Sunday didn't mean the absence of suffering. It meant the presence of a Savior who had already defeated the grave. Guys, this is exactly where the disciples were. Jesus was dead. Hope was buried. And Saturday stretched on, silent, heavy, and unresolved. But Easter tells us something that you and I desperately need to hear. God does his greatest work when everything feels like it's finally over. But here's the tension. Even when God's at work, we often don't see it. See, the women didn't show up at the tomb expecting a miracle, did they? They showed up expecting a funeral. And what they experienced about themselves reveals actually something inside of each one of us. And that leads to me my first point, is that you and I have a tendency, a natural proclivity to look for life in dead places. Early Sunday morning, 2,000 years ago, somewhere between 4 and 6 a.m., just as the first light of dawn was breaking and the sun hadn't been fully exposed, the women made their way to the tomb. They brought spices, strong perfumes to finish preparing Jesus' body, because they couldn't do it on Saturday because that was the Sabbath. And it was a day of rest. And bringing spices and different anointments is equivalent to what you and I do when we go visit a gravesite. We bring flowers, and it's to show what? Love and respect for the person that has passed. And when they arrived, everything changed. The massive stone that was at the entrance of the tomb, weighing at least 2 tons, 4 to 5 feet in diameter, 1 foot thick. It probably weighed around the weight of a Toyota Camry, and it was placed in tracks that were slightly descending. So all you had to do was take it out of its groove, and it would just allow gravity to do its work. And to actually move it, you'd have to go uphill, which would make it even heavier. 3 to 4 very strong men would be needed to roll that stone away. No rock. The women look inside the tomb, and they find no body. Listen, the rock moving away from the tomb wasn't to get Jesus out of the tomb. He had a transfigured body that could just literally go through walls. But the empty tomb was to get you and I and the early women and disciples to realize that the grave is empty. So the women, they would have been just like you and I if we were there. They were perplexed. Their minds were racing, and they were thinking, who would have done this? Roman soldiers? That doesn't make sense. The disciples? That doesn't make sense. Jesus definitely couldn't have just walked out by himself because he was dead. Who would have taken Jesus? It doesn't make sense. Because the woman, they were looking for Jesus in a place of death. Then suddenly, 2 men appear in clothes just dazzling in brilliant light. In the original language, this kind of dazzling light is equivalent to a lightning strike. Something that's very sudden, something that is very, very beautiful, but also very dangerous. And we see this pattern every time a human encounters a divine angelic being. It's not like, oh, this is great, how are you? There's beauty, but there's terror. And then the women, they fall to the ground in holy terror. And then the question comes that changed everything. Why are you looking for the living among the dead? That question cut deeper than the confusion of the empty tomb. You know what it did? it exposed the pattern that's in each and every one of us. And that question is another way of saying, if Jesus is alive, then life cannot be found in anything that dies. See, we do the same thing, right? We look for life in dead places. We look for identity in careers. We look for security in money. We look for meaning in relationships. We even look for life in being a good Christian instead of in a living Christ. See, that's what made Saturday so heavy for Sarah. It wasn't just the diagnosis. It was that everything that she built her life on, her future plans, her expectations, her dreams, suddenly gone. The places she looked for couldn't provide anymore. And Sarah was watching in real time everything that she built her life on die. See, if you look for life in things that can die, your hope will always feel fragile. But the resurrection confronts us and confronts that assumption. Because the only place that life can be truly found is the one who walked out of that grave. But that raises a deeper question. If Jesus really, physically, bodily, not metaphorically, rose out of the grave, then this isn't just about where we look for life. It changes what we even think life is. It means that the reality of life itself is not what we thought it was. Leads me to my second point. The resurrection rewrites reality. The resurrection rewrites reality. In verse 6, the angels declare, He's not here, He has risen. Listen, this is not just good news, this is new reality. The women had a category for death, but not a category for the resurrection. They were still operating with an old way of seeing the world, but reality had just been rewritten. I get it. If all we were taught and experienced and believed and heard was that the earth was flat, and if we sailed too long on the ocean, that one day we would fall off the edge. I get it. But what if the world was actually round? It would change everything, wouldn't it? It would change a lot and calm a lot of fears and anxieties inside of here. That first Easter morning, hear this, guys, was the greatest paradigm shift in history. It declared death is not the end. Sin is not final. Hope is not fragile. And Jesus is not someone who was, but He's someone who is. You see, the resurrection isn't just an event to believe in. It's a brand new lens to see everything through. If we truly believed in the bodily resurrection of Jesus, hear this, a literal, historical, physical event where a dead man walked out of a tomb with a new power in a glorified but recognized body, your life, my life would look radically different if we really believed it. Because if the resurrection is true, death is no longer the end. It's a doorway. We would live with significantly less fear of dying. Doesn't mean you'll have no fear. The grave is empty, so ours is only temporary. Suffering and loss of loved ones and dreams, it still hurts. It hurts deeply. but we would be able to face them with a defiant joy instead of despair. Comfort and security would stop being idols. We would take real risks because the worst thing that could happen has already been defeated. If the resurrection is true, then life is no longer about survival. It's about eternity. So our decisions now won't be shaped by a 70 to 80-year lens. Things like status, money, likes, and legacy, which shrink in importance. Generosity becomes normal. Forgiveness comes fast and deep. And we would honor our bodies without obsessing over them, knowing that they'll one day be raised and be remade like Him. If the resurrection is true, then witnessing about Jesus is no longer optional and for the gifted evangelist. It's inevitable. We would talk about Jesus in the way eyewitnesses talk about something they actually saw, not as a sales pitch, but as news that changes everything. Cultural pressure and embarrassment would lose power. We would live as if the risen King is actually King right now. But here's the problem. Most of us here, everybody, believe all of that. But our lives don't look like what we believe. There's a gap between what we say is true and how we actually live. Man, as I was preparing this message, I felt like the biggest hypocrite. Because I know I'm going to get up here and preach my guts out. And I'm like, I don't live like this is true. And I have to remember, there is now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. I got no shame. That's the devil. That's my own insecurity. So I just embrace it. I'm stepping into this new reality. But it hasn't fully shaped me. But just like you, I want it to. So much. My last point. Real belief changes everything. See, there's a massive difference between knowing the resurrection is true and living like it's true. You believe that on the third day, 2,000 years ago, Jesus, with the power of the Holy Spirit, came back alive after he was fully dead. You believe that he rose with victory and power and glory. Awesome. Your faith is now at the level of demons. Because demons believe that, and they actually believe that with more oomph than you and I do. Intellectual assent is a good starting point, but it's not enough. We need heart-level trust. You see, someone once said that the longest distance a person will ever travel is not across the world, but it's the distance from here to here. And sadly, some people will take all of their life and still never make that connection. Because it's one thing to say that Jesus is alive, to pronounce it, to declare it, to study it, but it's actually another thing to believe in it. Because life cannot be found in anything that dies. Head knowledge or belief says, yeah, this happened, I believe it. Heart belief says, because this happened, this changes everything. And I want you to look at the disciples as a case study. Before the resurrection, they were afraid, freaking out, they went into hiding, and they were uncertain about their future because they had given up everything to follow Jesus. After the encounter with the risen Christ, what were they like? All of them that got murdered for their faith, except for John, who died of old ages on the island of Patmos. They were bold, fearless, and unshakable. Cowards to bold risk takers. What happened? More knowledge? More doctrine? More theology? More study? No. They met Jesus personally, had an encounter, and it changed everything. We need to move from agreeing that this is true to trusting that this is true. See, genuine belief is transformative trust. It doesn't just inform your mind, it reorients your entire life because the risen Christ is alive and reigning now. So here's the question: how do you and I right now move from here to here where our life becomes changed forever? Don't you want to know that? I could just end and say, He is risen indeed. Great. But how do you actually make this transformative change? 3 things. 1, you need to immerse yourself in truth. See, isn't it interesting that when the women were in the cave or in the tomb, and they said, Jesus is risen, immediately the angels redirected the women and said this: remember what Jesus told you in Galilee, that he would need to be handed over to sinners, he needed to be crucified, and that he would be raised on the 3rd day. You know what they did? They appealed to Jesus' word. There is nothing that can transform us, help reshift how we think, than Jesus' word. And no wonder reading Jesus' word becomes so challenging for so many of us. Immerse yourself in truth. Do you know that the resurrection account is just a handful of accounts that's listed in all 4 Gospels? It was that important. You need to make it move from abstraction to making it personal. So read the stories. Go slow. Picture yourself in there. Ask questions. And then pray the prayer that Paul says in Philippians 3:10, that I want to know Christ and experience the mighty power that raised him from the dead. How do we move the stuff in the head to the heart? We need to live as it is true. Take 1 trust-oriented risk this week. Radical forgiveness. Maybe it's forgiving others, and maybe, just maybe, it's forgiving yourself. Generous giving, bold witness, even when it feels unnatural. Why do we have this thing in spirituality where we feel like, only if I feel it and it feels like it's right and it feels it's natural, do I feel like this is somehow going to be blessed? You know, in life, it never works that way. Right? If you apply that to the gym, when I feel like it, I get all my proteins and I get my creatines and I feel it and I get my 9 hours of rest and I'm just feeling it. You will not get strong and healthy that way. You got to do it even when it doesn't feel like natural. You just have to go through it. And the same applies spiritually. So how do we move from the head to the heart? You have to seek the living Jesus. Friends, you must have encounters with him. Not just thoughts, not just reflections, but an actual encounter. And this happens as you carve out consistent time seeking him. So I want to do something right now for a few minutes. I'm going to ask, if you're comfortable, I'm not going to do anything weird, close your eyes. I want to guide you through some imagery. So get relaxed. I want you to try really hard, and I want you to picture this with me as your eyes are closed. You're standing in front of a tomb. It's not Jesus' tomb, it's yours. Inside, it's cold, it's silent, and sealed off. And on the stone are written the names of all the things that you've lost: a marriage, friendships, your health, the future you planned for, the person that you thought you'd become. You return to this tomb again and again, trying to find life there, trying to make peace with what died. But now you hear footsteps. You turn, and it's Jesus. He's alive. He's not on the cross, not in the grave. And he doesn't rush to explain everything. He simply looks at you and he asks, "Why are you looking for life in there?" And then he invites you to do what the women discovered in that first Easter morning. He invites you to leave the tomb behind. Stop building your life around what is dead and follow him into what's alive. Some of us have stood at that tomb for a long time. On this Easter Sunday, the risen Christ is standing right there with you. He's not asking you to figure it all out or fix it yourself. He's simply asking you to trust him enough to walk away from what is dead and step into what is alive. So right now, in your heart, name the tomb you've been standing in front of. Many of you may just experience just a slight nudge, a slight idea, and just embrace that. Name the tomb that you've been standing in front of. And as you have that, and as an act of trust, would you just pray with me these words in your breath? Jesus, because you are alive, I'm not staying here anymore. I'm trusting in you. You can open your eyes and look at me. The tomb is empty. It's not a religious lore. It's not a nice metaphor. It is a new reality that God is asking us to lean into, to believe. Because if we do believe that the tomb is empty, that Jesus has raised to life victoriously, then everything changes. So stop looking for life in what is dead and start following the one who is our living hope. You see, the cross and all that it accomplished is an amazing reminder of what has been done. But the resurrection, with its new power, is not just a reminder, but it must be our definer. And if it becomes that, everything shifts. He's here. And it's not something that you snap your fingers and all of a sudden you believe in this. It's a process. And it takes time, it takes community, it takes intentionality. But Jesus invites you to take a leap of faith and to join him.